July 22nd, the Dow finished down 6 basis points, basically flat. The S&P finished down 10 basis points, essentially flat. The Nasdaq did finish down negative 146 points, or 0.57% down. The Nasdaq 100 finished 157 points down, or 0.54%. And the Russell 2000 finished down 1%. Let's get into it. We have earnings. It's going to be a big day. Stay tuned. Calls, 0 day on QQQs. This is our position here. You can see it, 285 here. I believe it peaked here at close to 3,000. I was trimming along the way here, sizing to the contract. So you see it going up at 680 here. We got involved, I think, in was it other calls here, 750 calls here as well. Doing some education here. Those calls went up to $400, 750 here. It looks like they went up pretty well as usual. If you see my streams, really good day here. Let's see how some of our members did today. Looks like our members, looks like a payout feed again today. It looks like off the bat, we have J Bob here making $245. Looks like Trader 115 took $130 scalp off that 707 call. Looks like Boy took some puts here, inverse me. Come on, bro. Come on, man. Looks like Kadokin got those 707 calls as well, made $460. Mosher took the 707 calls, made $495. Tris took those 707 calls, made $146. Looks like somebody else took some calls here for NVIDIA, made $500 here. One of my members looks like they passed their count today. This is them following my trades today. 100%, 6 for 6, $6,804 here in 1 day trading. Wow, that's amazing. Good job for you, bro. We have another member that took my 707 calls here. It looks like they made $304 of profit. We have Chris here. He blew a couple of his accounts here. Now really wanted to lock in. Got serious with me. He has 13 straight wins following me from yesterday. Wow, what an amazing day here. Looks like Hunky took some calls here. Looks like Max took some calls here as well. The QQQ 707 call got 5%, $216. Fax Scrubber took the 710 call, $31 here. Looks like J Bob took another call here, $9,000 here as well. And it was an amazing day. Let's get into what I saw. Check out the video here, real clip, where I demonstrate how to live trade and read price action in real time. I did close at 705. It did reclaim and still hold that 55 EMA. I think that's really important. 55 EMA is right here at 703.67. And currently after hours, it is up barely though, 0.08%. We did have a spike up after hours here on futures, though it did get sold down here. Currently right now in the daily time frame, we do have currently a falling three method pattern here. So kind of, again, the same thing I said before, kind of the way I view these candles is one large candle up here, kind of rise up here. It doesn't have to be 3 candles, you have to be creative here, right? Rise up here, and right here to look for confirmation of the downside and a reversal of bearish conditions. Do need a bearish Mabrizu engulfing candle here to the downside. You can kind of see these same patterns here, you know, like falling threes and, you know, all the sorts here. If you kind of just look here from this perspective of where you drop right here, drop your candle all the way down here. Again, I mean, this just happens to be 3 candles, but it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be 3. Right here, back to back, and obviously you got your engulfing candle all the way down here. So no different from how we have stuff here, looking for the same thing here. Going over here to SPY and the ES here. Previously we did have a bull flag here. We did break out of that. We did reject though here at our previous day high yesterday, which formed an evening star here. Again, no different from how we have here on the Qs. We do have that falling 3 method here. Obviously if you go to a different time frame here, or if you just kind of look at it from a different perspective, we also have an evening star here, right? You have your candle right here, and then you have your pivot. Okay, you can call this your doji, but really again what I'm looking for, no different on the Nasdaq, looking for here for the same thing on SPY and ES for a continuation to the downside of to confirm a reversal of bearish conditions here. Again, evening star is defined by that third candle to be engulfing, and I do need to take out this candle, which will take out these weekly lows from last week here. I do have my 95% zones here. Again, inverted hammer right here that I rejected at that pivot yesterday at trying to reclaim the previous day's highs. And here are my 95% zones here. We did have this squeeze zone here that we did identify here on Monday. And then again, your levels to the downside here are 745, 743, 740 for that 4 price target extension if we actually get that bearish engulfing candle. Levels to the upside here are 749, which we rejected out here today. Bulls need to reclaim that level. It's very simple. We're going to go ahead and mark it here as green as a call wall. Oops, it's not green. Oh. And then we have obviously the upper extension here of 752. Once you start to get through these upper extensions here, you notice sometimes you kind of squeeze. So have a squeeze zone right here. and have a secondary squeeze zone right here. No different from how I identified the squeeze zone right here. My next squeeze zones are right here where this liquidity is sitting at here. You can also again see the same pattern here again, falling through here, right? Bearish candle down, rise up. You actually broke down here. You had a dragonfly doji, only to have an engulfing candle right here. Okay. We did have earnings today. It looks like Google did beat. So basically, going to read some notes over here. Currently, Google is sitting under its 55-day EMA, which is institutional. And you can kind of see this pattern here, right? You do have a head and shoulders and a few other things, evening stars, of course, etc. But right now, what I kind of see here, a simple concept right here is undercut, right? Retest. Here's your pivot. You can consider this another right shoulder. Breakdown, undercut right, retest, breakdown, undercut right, retest, breakdown, undercut right, retest, breakdown. So that's concerning to me, right? So when that happens, obviously we lost 55 institutional support. I could get out of the way, right? I want the chart, I want the stock to do its thing here. I don't want to get involved until I'm at a key level, maybe right here, okay? Maybe right here, maybe right here. I'll consider getting to a Google long, maybe once it comes back down here to 299. We currently are down after hours on Google, 2.21%. And the ironic part and the funny part, right, is it had blowout earnings, right? So the revenue for Google was $119.8 billion year over year, 24% increase, versus what was expected was $116 billion. The cloud revenue was $24.77 billion, plus 82% year over year, versus what was expected, $22 billion. And then we have the cloud of income, more than 3x, margin was 35.6. Advertising spend revenue was 81.6, beat on all prints. GAAP EPS was 9.11, up 294% year over year. And then we have a total backlog for $514 billion. So obviously demand for Google is not the problem. Here for Google as well, everyone was worried about the return on invested capital. The fear incoming was Wall Street's whole anxiety was ROI. Prove the hundreds of billions of AI spend, which is CapEx, actually makes some money. So like what they're spending, right? Does it give them $1 or does it give them 2, 3, 4, and so forth, right? So basically, right? Well, that was answered from the earnings call. Cloud was supposed to do a negative, approximately $22 billion. It did $24.77 billion, which was obviously an enormous beat, with operating income more than tripling and margins going from 21% to 36% in 1 year. So I guess the question is, right, is the cloud making money? Well, obviously, right, 100%. It's not even debatable anymore. Gemini Enterprise sits in about 90% of the Fortune 100, and the model chooses about 22 billion API tokens in a minute. So why is the stock down? Because the ROI was yesterday's question. The market found a new one tonight, and it's about to cash, okay? Free cash flow is slipping negative. This is the big thing here. A lot of people forget about free cash flow. What is free cash flow? Kind of what it sounds like. So how much free cash you have sitting, right? So a very, very concerning thing here, right, is, and right, milk is gone here, right, revenue's gone, right, is you're making all this money, right? So then why isn't your free cash flow increasing, right? So you're saying Google's making all this money, why are their pockets bleeding? Right, free cash flow literally flipped negative, right? So that's a loss of operating income, which is confusing, right? Because like, why is not a key metric that a lot of people report? Doesn't matter. But anyways, I guess depending on how you calculate it, Google's free cash flow is flipping negative. Well, pretty negative, right? A company famous for gushing cash is now spending everything that comes in. So they already sold about 49.6 billion of stock in June for compute. And on the call, they said basically they're gonna have more bond offerings. Yep. And possible equity offerings. Yep. So they're being pretty blunt with what their strategy is and what they're trying to achieve and do. And so I guess the cash cow analogy is, right, you bought a cash cow, which is Google, but tonight the cow told you it's out of milk. So it's keeping every drop for itself, right? The shareholders who own this, right, for the buybacks and the cash back machine looked at that and said, and asked, right, like, is that what I really want? Do I want a company, right, that was giving me like $5, but now they're going to give me like $1? Does that make sense? So I guess that's another way to kind of look at the market and kind of the perspective. And I guess the numbers also that kind of detonated in after hours was, right, the CapEx spend was approximately 185 billion, right? Well, so far now we're at 205 billion, right? So they raised it on the call, right? Didn't decrease it. Morgan Stanley said basically all hyperscalers, right? That number is 1.2 trillion, and it was raised from 1 trillion, which we covered on Saturday. So basically, right, everyone's waiting for CapEx to come down, right? just to watch it go back up again, right? So they want people to spend less, right? But if you remember a video on Sunday night, right? A lot of companies, right, they don't have a choice. Google doesn't have a choice, right? Obviously, it's kind of in a league of its own. But the problem with Google, right, is if they stop spending money, right, to grow, you could argue, do they really need to grow? Like, what does actually growth even look like, right? How are they going to compete against a different company, right, that's trying to be innovative, right, that maybe does have the money to spend? So those are Google earnings, right, and it's currently down in after hours. We have Texas Instruments, basically a blowout beat, to my understanding. The print was clean, they beat, they raised guidance as well above consensus. They had solid margins. Operating income is up about 7 points to 42.3%. And the data revenue doubled for Texas Instruments year over year. That's a big, big deal, right? Well, the reaction was wrong, right? The stock went down anyway. That's super interesting, and I feel like genuinely troubling, right? So the problem is, right, you're having all these beats, right? Well, why are stocks going down, right? And I think a lot of people are forgetting, right? No different from CPI, no different from news, no different from different things that happen in the market, right? It's priced to perfection, but it's already priced in, right? If I'm looking at Texas Instruments, if I'm looking at Google, if I'm looking at, different stocks, Tesla, right? You better be, like, are you tripping? Like, you better be, right? So to beat, I guess, in double, right? Well, with all this income, with all the spend, right? With all this ROI here, right? So, right, people are, they want us to get excited, right? Why am I getting excited? My expectation was you better fucking be, right? You should have be, right? You told us you were gonna be, right? You were raising guidance in your past earnings. So I think a lot of problems that people have too, like, why is the market going down? Like, what's happening, right? You, like, on your call, right? Your last earnings call raised guidance. So you should have had these numbers that you said you were gonna have. And that's how I kind of view earnings, right? Earnings to me is like, you told me on this last conference call, right? You were gonna do X, Y, and Z, and did you do it on this quarter? If not, I'm losing your trust. And if you do, right, complete what you said you were gonna do, well, cool, you should have done it anyways. From an EMA's perspective here on Texas Instruments, it looks like you are, looks like you did close below, you did close above your 55 EMA here, but currently in after hours, we did knife right through that, and obviously it's not just Texas Instruments, it's obviously other stocks as well. Going over here to Tesla, currently Tesla is sitting under its 55-day EMA. You currently do have a bearish channel here, so bearish channels are kind of like no different from bullish channels, right? You can go up, right? You can go down, so it's kind of the same deal right here. You do currently have an inverse head and shoulders forming here on the daily time frame here. Maybe you're going to come back down here and grab this liquidity. I can go ahead and mark my levels out. I'll go ahead and send this to my Discord. If you are interested in joining my Discord, it's interview only. Please submit your application to do so. But going back to Tesla, right, they beat. They actually raised, and I guess the data center doubled, and it's still down. And actually, let me check this out here. This is Texas Instruments, so I found that to be auto. I was like, wait, okay, so I apologize for that. Anyway, so going back to Tesla here, the revenue was 28.24 billion, basically 26% increase, which is a record. I guess 100 billion TTM. Adjusted EPS was negative though, 0.33, and the expected was 0.55, so that's down about 18%. Operating margin was 4.1%, and the expected was, I can't read that number, negative 57%. And gross margins here were 16.8% versus the 19.5 consensus here. So free cash flow, they're obviously right losing money, and the CapEx spend increased by 142% to 5.79 billion. So they're spending more, making less, and taking in less. And then obviously they have the regulatory credits, 146 million from 439 million. So structurally, right, their credits are dead. Little bit other news here for Tesla, right? The Optimus robots was coming out eventually, right? Versus Waymo's, right? They're all over Miami. So what the call sold was Optimus robots are going to come soon. We have Cybercaps, robo-taxi expansions, space adjacent dreams, entire valuation, right? About 160x4 P, and count that rest on the future arriving. I think the uncomfortable observation, right, that people would notice is they just want to see the Cybercap at this point, right? So Tesla keeps talking about this. Tesla keeps talking about that. NVIDIA keeps talking about this. NVIDIA keeps talking about that. SMCI keeps talking about this. SCI keeps talking about that, right? And the problem we have is, right, like they keep telling people, right, they keep telling us, right, we're sold off chips. We have a backlog. I need to see what inventory you currently have, right? No different from like gold, like we talked about, we have Fort Knox. Has anybody ever seen it, right? This isn't the Bible, this isn't faith, this isn't religion. This is a market where you have companies like SMCI, right, over here, that beat on their earnings, by the way. Let me pull this up here, right? You have SMCI over here. They beat on their earnings, by the way. and they've been convicted of fraud 4 times. They literally claimed, they made a claim, right? And it's unverified. It's literally unverified. It's not verified. I want to be clear about that. SMCI's claims are not verified, right? They made a claim that they had a 5x backlog, like $60 billion, from, I think it was April to June. So all of a sudden, right, last ER all the way over here. So let's look at the chart here. Last ER over here. So from here, they didn't mention anything about that on the call. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. They didn't mention anything here. They didn't mention anything here. Not here, not here, and not here. But all of a sudden, right, they have a $60 billion backlog in income. Don't believe it. Don't trust them. They have a filing here on August 11th to fill out some forms, so I look forward to the audit. And that's why you have to be careful about why you choose the information that you get from people. Coming back over here to IBM. They missed, they lowered guidance, and it's still up after hours. Actually, I think it's down currently right now. Let me just double check. 0.02%. I guess it did spike up here after hours, so that's why this says this. They missed the quarter, and they lowered the full-year guide even below where it was. So revenue growth was cut to 4 to 5%, and the year-to-date subscription raised to smoke and mirrors was basically a quarterly miss, right? So IBM went up, right? I think Trump said buy IBM or whatever. And what happened with IBM? Sold off, and obviously, right? No different from IBM, right? I want to take you to a chart over here. I'm going to go ahead and read this out real quick. So basically, kind of surprises up. The mechanical explanation is roughly 6% of the float is short. So bad news priced in plus trapped shorts equals an up move on a down print. You can kind of see what happened here with MSTR here, right? So obviously on their last ER, right, they were selling off. Where is it at here? They were selling off here. Is this when it hit like 26th February? They were selling off here at 107, and obviously they kind of gapped up here, even on a crappy earnings. Everyone thought it was going to go to zero. Still think it's going to go to zero here. But, right, sometimes you have misses on ERs, but you still gap up, right? And that's why I tell people you have the 3 pillars in trading: the macro, the what, the fundamental, the why, and the technical, right, which is the chart. Technically speaking, at the time, right, from the chart perspective, right, you were just oversold, right? I mean, there's a few other things, I might get into it right now. There's other videos that kind of outline that, but you know, using those 3 pillars, you can understand why certain stocks might go up or down, kind of based on their ER and their guidance and kind of where they're at here. Going back over here to IBM. Basically, right, live trade, honestly, right, shorted it, lost $1 or $2, got out, moved on because there was greener pastures. And obviously when a trade isn't working out, a better one is sitting right there. You don't have to marry the position. That's what I tell people all the time, right? If you're wrong, get out, right? If it goes back up or it goes back down your way and you happen to be right, you're still wrong. Just, you know, I'm defined by rules and disciplined by my trades. And I think everybody else should be too. 22% here. So you need to have like your trims ready, right, when you're following. You know, looking at the screen and kind of hearing me saying, "Oh, it's trim right now," right? A lot of people they don't trim, and kind of like I said yesterday, you know, you can't just pay or you can't just expect. you can't just follow me when times are good and then not follow me when times are not good and or when times are still good, right? What I mean by that, right, is if I'm up $315, I'm gonna go ahead and trim here. I'm trimming 2 more contracts here. I have 3 contracts left, right? There's gonna be someone out there that won't trim. They have 10 contracts still. What happens when you have 10 contracts still? You're risking what? Especially in a market like this. You're risking coming back down here and creating an inverse head and shoulders. Okay, so I have 2 contracts left, right? The worst case scenario, we go up. These are gonna print and I'm gonna be doing amazing here. Worst case scenario is they don't print, right? And I'm having a bad fucking day. Because I just made like 300-ish bucks, 400 maybe. But guess what? I have 400 in equity here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim one more contract here. Okay. So I'm left with one contract. I'm fine with that. We're up 18%, right? The reason why I bought 10 contracts is, do you think I can make that much money with 50 bucks? I cannot do that at all. I need to buy the capital, and a lot of us have a hard time doing that. That's why I use options funding for some people. Like to advertise it. You know, it's a platform, you can get payouts. I've gotten payouts, etc., etc. But it's one of the most important reasons to why. Hey, what are you doing? You need to go to school, man. You shouldn't even be home. Let me call. I'm calling your mom. So I have 7. Oh, here we go. Here's my 707 calls right here. They just refreshed here. So my average is like 2.4. It should have been like a little bit less. And I'm taking these 707 calls, looking to break these highs up here. Again, this is a situation where you want to run a stop loss. Your stop loss should kind of be back down here. Obviously, we come back down here. These contracts will not be doing too hot. So I'll try to, I guess, show you how to kind of manage your emotions here. One thing I'm looking at is like a possible cup and handle. We do have that inverse head and shoulders that I talked to you about. I do want to come back up here to 74 here. Remember what I told you about the NASDAQ, right? You have your levels where you have like 100, you have 50, you have 100, 0, 50, 100. Looking to kind of obviously be capture that 50 level here. We're still kind of barcoding around it and looking to come back up to maybe take out that 300 level here. That's just a perspective you can have here. So, right, you're at the 50 level here. Your point of control just moved up from 231 to 252 here, right? So, again, if you're oversized like this, make sure just to trim. You're right, trim if you're oversized, right, like this, right? That way you can't lose.
Reset or some shit.